Cool. All right. Cool. No, I understand. I just gotta leave now, man. So please get out of my way.
We haven't finished the movie.
Call me about that next week, please, and then we'll talk about it.
Sit in that chair, and we're gonna watch this movie, and then I'm gonna make you a proposal. Come on.
This is a very, 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 very boiling Saturday afternoon, and we're here to talk about a truly awesome film. We always say that, but this time we're not lying.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Sorry to Bother You, 2018, Boots Riley. Okay. No, Sorry to Bother You is the name of the film, not to Sorry to Bother You with the film.
Oh, it was no bother at all.
Yeah, okay. What? Where are we? Yes, anyway, the film, Sorry to Bother You. So you liked it then, mate?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think that's one of the best films I've ever seen.
Wow, well, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it's even better than Joe versus the Volcano.
Okay, good. That's a good thing, I guess.
It is, but no, seriously, it was. I just thought it was excellent on all fronts. Beautifully shot, really, really good performance and script, and just everything was like a cathedral of talent. And I really liked it.
So we run a sci-fi and philosophy podcast, and you hadn't seen this film before. So when I asked you to watch it, did it take you till the last 20 minutes? And we'll get on to what that involves a little later, I guess. Well, absolutely we will, obviously. Did it take you till the last 20 minutes to conceive of this as a sci-fi film? Or did you think it was sci-fi? Does sci-fi just happen in the last 20 minutes, or is the film sci-fi? That's before we get into anything. What do you think? What's your response to that?
I mean, so I think we should just be frank, because we aren't a spoiler-free discussion podcast. So what Dave's referring to is the bit 20 minutes towards the end where it's revealed that the evil villain is making horse people. Which is, I guess, the point at which it is Equisapiens. That's the point at which it is uncontrovertibly. Is that the word? Uncontrovertibly?
I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that word.
At which it
Incontrovertibly, isn't it?
At which there is no doubt that it is sci-fi.
Yes, absolutely.
And so, I mean, there's two ways of looking at that. First of all, does the rest of the film retroactively become sci-fi because of that incident? And then in the second watch, you realize it. Or is it already sci-fi in some way? I would say the point at which I decided it was sci-fi, obviously I was looking for when does this become sci-fi, is as soon as the what they called worry-free advert started, which is this cult. Not cool. It's sort of positioned as a cult, but it's not a cult. It is basically labor camps.
It's a massive corporate. It's a massive corporate endeavor.
Yeah, massive corporate endeavor for free, unpaid labor. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is sci-fi because this is a dystopian future. You know, when he says, "Oh, I'm working for just commission," and at first I just sort of absorbed that, like, okay, that's probably something that would happen in America. But in fact, that's already an erosion of workers' rights at the beginning of it. And it sort of starts off as with the feel of a kind of a comedy slob or loser film, where the main character sort of, you know, he's living in his uncle's garage. He's not really got himself together. It starts off with that kind of aesthetic and feel, but then suddenly it doesn't take you that long, maybe 10 minutes, to realize that this is a film about later-than-late capitalism.
Later-than-late capitalism. Brilliant.
Shall I trademark that one? Later-than-late capitalism, where no one has any employment rights. People are in absolute poverty, and it's actually a film about capitalism. So it already is that kind of challenge, because you sort of go, oh, this guy's not pulling himself up by his bootstraps. In fact, it's not possible. Well, you know, the question is about how limited opportunities there are in such a such well. So yeah, I think it's great, and I think as soon as those elements started to crop up, it counted as sci-fi, because at least dystopian fiction.
The fourth day of violent protests at Worry-Free headquarters. Protesters say Worry-Free's method of lifetime labor contracts is a new form of slavery. Worry-Free CEO Steve Lift was interviewed on Oprah today.
No. Conclusively, no. Our workers do not sign contracts under threats of physical violence. So therefore, the comparison to slavery is just ludicrous and offensive. We're transforming life itself. We're saving the economy. I mean, we're saving lives. It's all highlighted in my book. I lay out the whole thing.
Many of the violent protesters are part of the Left Eye faction and are identifiable by the black mark under their left eye.
There's no employment for many people. Even sweatshops have been replaced by worry-free live-work centers. These places are prisons. People are packed in there like sardines, fed cheap slop, and worked to the bone 14 hours a day.
So look, it's set in Oakland, California, present day. Oakland's a city across the San Francisco Bay from San Francisco, and is kind of its secondary, it's kind of a secondary city to San Francisco, and it's an area that's pretty much undergoing gentrification at the moment. So it's got that a lot of displacement going on there. So, and into this mix, there's a young black African-American man, Cassius Green, everyone calls him Cash. Yeah, you called him a loser. Interestingly, when I was thinking about that, I was thinking of this as loser slacker, but it is. He's an economically deprived citizen of America, a black economically deprived citizen living in the suburbs, and you kind of get the sense that he's been slacking for a while, and he wants to get his shit together. Yeah. So what he does is he goes for a telemarketing job. He gets the job because he does a bullshit CV, and it kind of captures the imagination of that person who's employing. And in order to become better at his job, he adopts a white voice. And that allows him to sell more and more products in his telemarketing job until he's promoted to a power caller and goes upstairs. In the meantime, his colleagues who are working in this telemarketing area want to organize their labor through a union. And so you get the kind of like the idea of everyone's trying to organize to improve the telemarketing job for everybody except Cash, who realizes he's got a skill and suddenly he can monetize it. And it gets to go upstairs and become a very highly paid member of the elite of this company, and in so doing gets caught up in, as we were talking about, a massive corporate conspiracy which is going to involve slave labor. So I think that's the kind of broad outline of the films.
Yeah.
Which bits do you think really jumped out at you as before we get to, because I think where we're going to end up talking about is the last 20 minutes of the film, because even if you talk about that,
I actually think those are that's the least interesting part of the film.
No, I was only going to say, I'm going to talk about the last 20 minutes because in a sense, they're there to, everything that's been gathering beforehand is kind of like crystallized in those 20 minutes. Questions of capitalism and slavery and all of this, that and the other. But absolutely. There's these little seeds and little bits that are dropped throughout the film that kind of like, before you even get to the rise of the Equisapiens.
Yeah, I mean, it's the story about a class traitor, ultimately, who scabs from his works union, which he's a founding member of, because he's offered a higher role. And it's about that sort of tension of capitalism does actually work for a vast minority. And there is movement from the lowest class upwards. And that sort of spectre or the regulative ideal that actually I could set up my own business. I could work a bit harder at my job and do well out of the system. I could move from exploited to exploiter, particularly in America, where it's the central idea of the American dream is that you can, all it takes is effort and work to be able to move up in that way. What I think is really clever about this film, it's all done through mise en scène. There's something really eerily off about this. I mean, the thing about the the protests against Worry Free, this slave recruiting organization, is obviously the most signposted thing. That's sort of like that's the text rather than the subtext. But there's also like little things along the way that make you kind of question it. I mean, the point at which I thought, this is really, really interesting is when he's successful, he's earning all of this money by selling slaves. Ultimately, he's earning all this money and gets the nice car, and then he's got the nice apartment. But the nice apartment is tiny. It's a vanishingly small apartment. It's just not a garage.
It's just not a garage. Yeah.
And he's able to buy commodities, but land is clearly still massively overpriced or massively scarce because he's in this sort of like corner studio apartment in this sort of ropey old building. There's not really enough room for him to stand up next to his bed. And I sort of look at that and go, actually, that's not better than my house. And my house isn't a great house. It sort of says in the bio, not the bio, in the blurb, this is a alternate reality. But to me, it feels like this could be reality, say maybe in 5 years or so. I mean, maybe not necessarily the Equisapiens bit, but the idea of increasing power to a small group of very libertarian entrepreneurs who own the top 6 tech companies in the world, who get praised for innovations that actually take jobs away from people through automating them and eroding workers' rights and stuff like that. There's a brilliant moment where it has that bit, the sort of the montage where the main character sort of changes his mind and he's going to blow the whistle, and he does blow the whistle, and you get this montage of all these interviews, and it backfires because everyone's like, oh yeah, this is a brilliant idea, turning people into horses. This is an excellent idea, and the world that they're in has already, the battle's already been lost.
You want to make some money here? Then read the script with a white voice.
People say I talk with a white voice anyway, so why ain't it helping me out?
Well, you don't talk white enough. I'm not talking about Will Smith's wife. That ain't white, that's just proper. I'm talking about the real deal.
Okay, so like...
Hello, Mr. Everett. Cassius Green here. Sorry to bother you.
I mean, you got it wrong. I'm not talking about sounding all nasal. It's like sounding like you don't have a care. Got your bills paid. You're happy about your future. You're about ready to jump in your Ferrari out there after you get off this call. Put some real breath in there. Breezy, like, I don't really need this money. You've never been fired. Only laid off. It's not really a white voice. It's what they wish they sounded like. So it's like what they think they're supposed to sound like. Yeah. Like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer. This is Langston from Regal View. I didn't catch you at the wrong time, did I?
We've talked a little bit about capitalism in America. I think it's meditating wider than that in the first place. So you got a sense, particularly when he goes upstairs, that there's a global effort, the globalization of this infrastructure that's being put in place by Worry Free. There's a moment where he's doing his telemarketing again, and he's talking to a Japanese businessman. Yeah. We perhaps talk about the way in which that's done on the film. We talk a bit more about the style. So you get the idea that, and Cash is telling the Japanese businessman, we can, with our labor that we've got here, the worry-free labor, make twice as many phones for you at half the price.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the spatial dimensions of the film and globalism. You talked about calling it later-than-late capitalism. Absolutely. But I think there's also a sense of which the past, the idea of generational slavery, is also being captured up in the film. And even from the very first moment, you mentioned that the moment when you start thinking of a dystopian sci-fi was when the first ad appears on TV for Worry Free, and they're all in those bunk beds. Things in the newspaper after that talk about a new form of slavery. And I think it's always harking back to the idea of slavery in the film, and the historical dimensions of that sort of like permeate the present absolutely to its core. The very fact that in order to get on, Cash has to use his white voice. And it's worth mentioning at this point, he gets given this advice by a guy sitting next to called Langston, another black guy played by Danny Glover. And his advice there is, I'm going to give you some game now, use your white voice. And when he starts explaining what he means by a white voice to Cash, he starts saying, sound like you've got a good car, you've got your bills paid, you've never been laid off, that you're fitter, happier, more productive. We keep returning to that Radiohead song all the time. And it's got that idea that the impact of slavery in the present day is still felt in the economic dimensions of the characters' subjectivities and identities within America at that moment. So I think those are the two ways in which I'd want to expand the way in which capitalism is framed here. One, it's not just downstairs in the basement room. Yeah, that's all about America and flogging stuff to other poorly paid people, to the middle classes. Yeah, you go up in the gold elevator. Yeah, and there you're selling multinationally on a global scale. And that in itself is picking up on, a global slave trade, which kicked off the Anthropocene, which kicked off the way in which international trade operated for the West.
Welcome, friends. Gather around. Form a semicircle. Tonight, we will have a transformative experience. In those containers, there are broken cell phones, used bullet casings, and water balloons filled with sheep's blood. Cell phones can only work with the mineral coltan, which is found in Africa's Congo. The profit involved in this has created hardship and wars. I will stand here. If you feel so moved, you may throw the items in the containers at me. While I'm standing here, I will be reciting excerpts from the timeless Motown-produced movie entitled The Last Dragon. I will recite those lines that Angela says to Eddie Arcadian as she leaves him. Let's begin. And in the end, Eddie, you know what? You're nothing but a misguided midget arsehole with dreams of ruling the world. Yeah, and also from Kew Gardens, and also getting by on my tits. Bravo! And in the end, Eddie, you know what? You're nothing but a misguided midget arsehole with dreams of ruling the world, and also from Kew Gardens, and also getting by on my tits.
So you talk about the union and one kind of line of attack of this mire of globalization, capitalism, and racism and slavery. It might just be worth just talking about Detroit. So Cassius's girlfriend, because there seems to be on offer another way to critique what's going on here. Not better than the labour organisation, but parallel to and resonating with, and that's, if you like, through art and through activism in the way in which she operates. Detroit is a performance artist, and I just like the way in which the first time you meet her, she's twirling those signs, which is often depicted in movies. And having done this once myself in pouring rain in English weather, is a pretty horrible way to earn a few bucks. But she is turning this into a performance, into an art form. I've got the biggest sign on the best corner. Why is it the best corner? It's because I'm there. I don't even care if somebody goes to the shop. The sign is turning in all directions. You couldn't even find the shop she was advertising for, so to speak. It's not even clear that there is a shop that she's advertising. So it becomes a real disruptive force to that. The other moment is, and this is placed alongside when Cassius has to do his performative rap for the white audience that Steve lifts. She's doing this performance art in her gallery that she's just opened, a kind of Marina Abramovich thing where she's physically attacked. She's physically attacked while reciting a speech from a movie called The Last Dragon from the mid 80s, a martial arts movie but with a black lead, and it's quite famous within black rap and black culture within America. And people are just pelting her with stuff. And again, Cash doesn't get it. Yeah, he just doesn't get what's going on here.
No, he says, "Why would you? What is it? Why would you demean yourself?"
Yeah, why would you demean? But this goes back to he doesn't understand because he wasn't listening. There is an absolutely beautiful scene just before all of this, where he goes. She's just got this space, and she's putting up the art around the walls, and it's these big kind of like constructions of the African continent, really big, made out of scrap metal. And he says, he sort of asks, trying to show interest to his girlfriend, what his girlfriend's up to. Yeah. Why did you choose Africa? And she starts on this conceptualizing why she chose Africa. We don't really know what she says because he drifts off. And what the film does in one of its wonderful of many stylish flourishes, it drops her voice down in the mix and this kind of dreamy music is playing, and he's just standing there. Yeah, he's not listening. He doesn't care. He's got no idea what this is about. He doesn't even see the relevance of it. It's a very patronizing, patriarchal kind of relationship he's setting up there. You know what I mean? With this woman who's actually, in her own way, trying to attack this dominant ideology of globalization, racism, and capitalism.
Although the thing that you've omitted from that is that the film is also critiquing her attempt. For such, she uses a white voice during the performance. Cassius says this, it's very bougie, what she's doing.
He does. He accuses her of basically being in the same position of him. She's going to be selling her ghetto art to white bourgeois clients who come through the door.
Yeah, and I think, while he's wrong that what she's doing is anywhere near as bad as what he's doing, there's a truth there in that that's also not a path to victory. That's not a path to fixing everything. So Cassius's path of just working really hard and offering support from the sidelines doesn't work. Using art to get the bourgeoisie to feel sympathy for you doesn't work. The only thing that's presented as working is the revolutionary effort.
Yeah, okay. I hear you, but I don't think what she's doing is captured in that way. She is a disruptive influence. Admittedly, it's an individualistic disruption. Yeah. You've made me think twice on that one. I'm going to have to look at the film again to be able to respond on that.
I think it probably speaks to you as someone of your generation, because she's very punk. She's very it's very very much aesthetics can be revolutionary and shocking. She's always got these earrings that she's making, and everything that she does is sort of really powerful. But when that sort of comes face to face with capital, and this is probably the only film I've seen that uses the word capital rather than capitalism. Yeah. As soon as that comes face to face, how can this survive? Only by selling itself to the bourgeoisie to be part of their own aesthetic of come into my apartment. Look at this challenging piece of art, and it actually, in its own way, sustains things because it's not a just system.
Well, I don't think it's right. Okay, so I have got a response to this. We're watching and talking about a film that's doing the very thing that you're saying art can't do, and yet we're saying it's doing it. And I think that's why I said it's not opposed to the union effort, but runs alongside it and in parallel. Yep. That there is these two tram lines, if you like, neither of them escapes, right? Because as we're going to see at the end of the film, there's quite a shocking reveal. Yep. But there are two escapes there. And we're talking about a film. We're talking about an art project. Yep. We're talking about something like that can indeed make people think in the same way that a piece of philosophy can make people think, because if it is simply and only practical praxis in the world, i.e. on the streets activism that can change things, that's fair enough. But at the same time, we're going to have to say, well, we don't need philosophy then, we don't need political writings, we don't need art, we don't need any of these other things that can attack on all different fronts. And that's what, to me, the alignment of activism is, attacking on all these fronts at the same time.
I just think you're being very generous to art as it's presented in the film, because it has nothing in common with the film itself. So the film, the film's this fantastic effort, make people think, all of those things. It does it exceptionally well, whereas this film is a much more accessible artistic medium than what she's doing. You know, it's this sort of really cliquey performance art thing. It's a bit cringy what she's doing. It reminded me of being in poetry nights in Manchester, where everyone just tries to do an impression of John Cooper Clarke.
Okay.
I don't know. I interpret it as being deliberately not great, but deliberately problematic. I think if there's a hypocrisy involved of when you said, look, you're saying that this is a great film that's doing the thinking thing, whereas in the film art can't do the thing. I think the hypocrisy might be in the film.
Talking about a manager for fucking horse people.
No. The equisapien Martin Luther King Jr., but one that we create, one that we control.
So you want to have a false leader for these fucking horse people, but at the same time he works for you?
Yeah. Keep shit simple.
Well, why the fuck did you choose me? Out of everybody you could have chose, why did you pick me? For what?
Cash. You are awesome. I've never seen anyone go through the ranks at Regal View like you did. And I want someone like that at Worry Free. Someone hungry. Someone who will fucking shank their own friend in the back if it means getting what they want. Now look, I can see that you're freaked out and that you want to say no. But I wouldn't do that before you see what I'm offering.
So look, I think now's the point to talk about when the equisapiens get introduced into the film. So this is quite near the end, Matt. Yep, as you know. And the way in which it happens is Cassius is invited into the inner sanctum of Steve Lift, and for a personal tete-a-tete. They're going to have a little chat, and this is where the film does so much and tells you so much about its style, because one of the first things he does is Steve Lift gives Cassius a line of cocaine, or what we think is a line of cocaine. That'll come into doubt. The interesting thing to me is what happens is that Cassius needs to go for a piss. He gets told to use the jade door. He accidentally goes through the olive door, and that's where he discovers the equisapiens. And because the film, and I remember this from when I first watched it, because this film is this kind of countercultural, sort of like slightly anarchic film, I thought this was a drugs episode. I thought this, and it's positioned as it could be that he's going through a drugs episode. There's some kind of mind-altering substance. He then comes back into the room. We won't go into all of how he ends up back in the room, but he comes back into the room, and Steve Lift says he'll explain everything to him by playing him a video. And there's this kind of like Michael Gondry, I think who's a filmmaker. It's they play on his name as, I think they call it Michael Dondry or whatever. This kind of animated thing talking about, since the dawn of time, humans had tools and but these were modifications of ourselves. We work out, we study to improve our bodies and our minds. But we can do even better than this. Humans can be made stronger, more efficient, more productive, more obedient. Yep. And how are we going to do it? We've got this drug, which if you take, will transform this human body into this powerful equisapien, the future of labor. And now Cassius thinks that powder wasn't a psychedelic, so to speak, and now he's grounded in reality, and he thinks he's taken the drug and he's infected and he's going to become it. And he's very, very worried about that. So it's just that the way it's introduced there, it's introduced almost as a tease, as a psychedelic side effect of some drugs being taken. Yeah. And then it's reinforced, and the nature of that drug keeps changing until we get to almost the final scene when he bangs his nose and he starts turning into an equisapien. And you think that's where the film ends. But it doesn't. puts up some title
cards. There's a pre-credit scene,
a post-credit, pre-credit scene, sort of like a little coda of when he invades Lift's house. Now, why does Lift invite him into that room? It's all about, that he wants him to be this, what does he put it? This kind of equo-sapien Martin Luther King Jr., but one that we control.
Yeah.
Whereas in effect, he sort of becomes that kind of figure, but not through the control of Steve Lift. He becomes it because he is transformed through the drug. And it's unclear if that drug took a long time to take effect or something else has happened or how he's ended up transforming there.
So the very revolution in production that he's tried to bring about, Lift, is all it's ended up doing is creating a more powerful worker who is perfectly equipped to revolt. And it reminds me of the master-slave dialectic in Hegel almost, which is that, really the power does lie with the worker because it's the worker that has is doing the labor, which is what has value in the system. And if they're able to use their labor to help the owners of the means of production do their thing and earn their money, they can also withdraw that and use that power to take it back, to take that value back, which is sort of it's an oddly positive note because it ends up becoming such a dystopian in tone. It's sort of in those last sort of like very rapid last 10 minutes of the film, I was sort of thinking, are they going to go really, really dark here? Are they going to just sort of say, look, there's no happy ending here, or they're going to give some sort of hope, and they end up landing on hope?
Thanks for calling, man.
Yeah. Look, I betrayed you. I know it's not going to change anything, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I acted stupid.
Man, hey, we good. All right, but all you got to do is just do right from now on, man.
Yeah, no, I tried to change it. I tried to stop it, but it's just right in front of their faces. They're turning human beings into monstrosities, and nobody gives a fuck.
Most people that saw you on that screen knew calling their congressman wasn't going to do shit. If you get shown a problem but have no idea how to control it, then you just decide to get used to the problem.
Yeah, and that's why our plan for tomorrow is important. Because if we stop them from crossing the picket line this time, we win.
It's a good plan.
I just want to celebrate the visual style of that film. It's just beautifully put together, and a lot of it happens in scene, but through the montage. When he's on the phone and the desks drop down into the environment in which he's going to be talking to somebody, so he's actually there present with them while they're having sex, while a woman is upset that her husband is dying. And when those things happen, it's not a visual trick. It's a visceral trick. He feels his desk moving like he's being caught up in an earthquake, and he feels himself being dragged into this. And it kind of translates the idea of how attuned he is to be able to do this kind of thing. That he's got an aptitude for it. I think that's brilliant. There's another great moment when he sits back in his chair in the office and says something like, "You really going to stuff all them French fries in your mouth?" and looks off screen right. And when we cut to a bar where his friend is stuffing a load of French fries into his mouth. I mean, there's just too many. It's just it's just a visually stunning piece of art.
Yeah, the physical effects of the film are great. Like the transition when he's transitioning in terms of affluence, and you see bits of his apartment transform into better versions of themselves and stuff like that. Some great physical effects.
Yes, I mean, it's really, all happening in camera, so to speak. What about you, Matt? Anything just to sign off with?
To me, one of the many subtexts going on is that Lift is just a man. The ultimate way in which that's presented is that he's got a house and they've managed to get there, and they can kill him, or they can force him to do things, or to sort of dismantle things. Ultimately, if you get to him, you can do something. Now, to me, there's the moment where Lift's sort of saying everything to Cassius. This is what happened. I want you to do this. He's got all of the exposition. He knows Our hero knows absolutely everything about the plan, and he's in a room with the villain. What is the moral thing to do in that situation? What would you do in that situation when you've been told all of this? It's like being sat in a room with a murderous dictator, and I think that's the great moral problem. The most philosophical moment in the film is sort of challenging you. What the hell would you do there?
Yeah, that's very good.
I don't know. It's a great film, and to me, that's the most potent problem. A lot of it is about, well, what would you do? What would you do if, in the middle of a strike, you were offered a major life-changing promotion?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, what would you do is the whole. It's a lot easier to imagine. You've probably heard me say this before. It's a lot easier to imagine if you're living on a poor street and some dude 6 houses down has just got promoted and bought a new car. It's a lot easier to imagine, oh, I could do that, than thinking about how can we change the power structure of the whole society we were in, so none of us are living in poverty. And so the question of what would you do when he's offered that job, just when the whole activist thing is kicking off, I mean, that's, in a sense, it's a brave film that it chases that narrative line to explore those questions.
And I know it's not really. I mean, one of the things we're not going to be able to talk about is the manager characters on that floor who are all brilliant in their own way and bring back.
Oh, you mean Mr. Blank?
Yeah. No, on the first floor that they're on.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, but it's like I know the film doesn't really come down one side or the other on this, but to me, it's clearly not a coincidence that that's the point he gets offered the promotion, because that's one way you can try and break solidarity, by having the most popular person on the floor achieve this dream of, or you can be a power caller by going up to the next floor and that sort of thing.
He's the guy down the street who's got the promotion and the car that's supposed to make you think I can do that. But to their credit, to the activist credit, that doesn't work. And in fact, he loses his girlfriend over it. So the film's kind of looks at that, but won't buy that.
Yeah. I mean, what he wants to be is a collaborator. So he's okay selling the slaves, but he's not really that comfortable as soon as he gets taken too far up this echelons, and then finally there's someone saying, "I'll give you $100 million if you really get involved in this." He says to him, "I saw how you stabbed all of your friends in the back in order to get where you are. Yeah. I need someone like you." I mean, imagine being told that.
Yeah, exactly.
If Jeff Bezos came to you in your loneliness of lonelies.
Loneliness.
Sorry, no, I've got it wrong. Lowliest of what is it?
Loneliness.
Loneliness of lonelies. Yeah, I fucked that up. That's not gonna be able to go in. I think we're done though.